Hey guys, glad you're here tonight. Go ahead, dim the lights, pull the blanket up to your chin, and maybe turn on that quiet fan in the corner. Let the hum settle around you like a soft toga of white noise. This isn't going to be an story, no loud surprises, no thrilling chariot races, just history. The slow, grim kind that creeps under your skin and stays there like a Roman sunburn. And hey, before we begin, if you find yourself oddly enjoying these dark bedtime journeys into the miserable corners of the past, feel free to like the video and subscribe. No pressure, just a gentle nudge from the crumbling ruins of the past. Now, close your eyes, or don't, that's up to you, because you're about to wake up, not in your cozy 21st century bed, not to your alarm clock or morning coffee, but in the Roman Empire. The year, let's say 125 CE, Rome is thriving. The empire stretches. From Britain to Egypt, marble temples scrape the sky, aqueducts hum with flowing water. Senators sip wine in shaded courtyards, while philosophers debate under olive trees. Sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Well, not for you, because you're not one of the nobles reclining on velvet cushions. You're not strolling the marketplace in a toga with golden trim. You're not even a low-ranking soldier with bad boots and worse morale. You're a slave, bought, sold, owned, forgotten. You open your eyes to the rough, splintered beams of a slave barrack ceiling, low, dark, and damp. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a wooden plank with straws so old it crumbles into dust when you breathe on it. No pillow, no blanket, just your own arms crossed over your chest to keep in what little warmth the night has spared. You shift. Slightly, your body aches from yesterday, and the day before, and the 10,000 days before that. There's no rest in your bones, just the memory of labor. You are not a citizen. You have no rights, no voice in the Senate, no family name, not even your own name, not anymore. That was taken when you were taken. You belong to someone else now, a Roman merchant, a rich matron, a farmer with too much land and too little patience. Doesn't matter, they call, you come. That's the rule. You are property, measured in denarii, weighed by your health, and valued for your obedience. You are the broom, the pot, the ox, the entertainment, and the shame. And the worst part, you're replaceable, like a worn-out sandal, tossed aside when broken, forgotten the next day. Outside, a rooster cries. Loud, early you groan, but not too loud. One of the overseers might hear, and your back still remembers the sting of the last complaint. You sit up slowly, bones stiff, like old clay. Your tunic, if you were lucky enough to get one this week, smells like sweat and mildew. There's no water to wash, no time. Your day begins now, and it won't end until the sun does. So welcome to the Roman Empire. You've survived the night, which means you owe someone a full day of back-breaking work. But don't worry, it only gets worse from here. So, you've stretched, you've stood up slowly, because your knees are still thinking it over, and now you're blinking in the pale Roman dawn. It smells like fire smoke, animal sweat, and something else. Maybe a rat died in the wall again. But you don't complain. You can't, because in the eyes of Rome, you are not a person. You are property, not metaphorically, not emotionally, legally, entirely. You are someone's tool, like a hammer or a plow. And when a tool breaks in ancient Rome, it's not repaired. It's replaced. You weren't always a slave, probably. Or maybe you were. It's hard to say. Some people are born into it. the way others are born into wealth. Only instead of receiving a gold ring, you were handed a life of servitude, pain, and a future that ends in either hard labor or quiet, forgotten death. Or maybe you were captured in war, during a raid, or just unlucky. Maybe you were caught in Gaul, or Nabatea, or somewhere near the edge of an empire you never asked to be part of. Maybe Roman soldiers dragged you from your village, chained your wrists, and marched you to the coast. Maybe your first glimpse of the empire was the underside of a slave ship, dark and heaving, with 100 strangers coughing beside you in the dark. Or perhaps it was your own family who sold you. Times get hard. Crops fail. Fathers drink. Mothers cry. And sometimes the only thing left to sell is you. However you arrived, it didn't matter. Once you passed through the gates of Rome or the slave market of Capua, you stopped being a human in the eyes of the law. You became a thing, and things get bought. Your buyer circled you like a piece of meat, looked at your teeth, measured your legs, checked for scars or signs of rebellion. Maybe you were branded, a hot iron pressed to your skin with the mark of your master, a letter, a symbol, a warning. You were catalogued, registered, priced. Maybe you were lucky and bought by a wealthy house to work indoors, sweeping floors, cooking lentils, scrubbing olive oil off your master's sandals. Maybe not. Maybe you were sent to the fields, to the mines, to the quarries, or worse, to the arena. But here's what matters. You don't have a choice. Not anymore. The law doesn't protect you. If you're beaten, it's legal. If you're starved, it's ignored. If you're killed, well, that's just a financial loss for your owner. Like breaking a vase or crashing a wagon. If you run away, you'll be hunted. If you're caught, you'll be tortured. And if you try again, they might just crucify you along the Appian Way. As a warning to the others, you don't get holidays, you don't get pay, you don't even get a name, or at least, not your own. You're given one. And if your master gets bored, he can change it. You are what they say you are, and they say you're theirs. So you lower your eyes. You keep your mouth shut. You work until your hands split open. And you hope the pain means you're still alive. Because as a Roman slave, survival isn't freedom. It's just the next day, and it's barely begun. So you've made it through the first few hours of the day without collapsing. Congratulations. That means you get to return to your home later. Or at least, the Romans call it that. You might call it a storage closet for humans. Let's start with the lucky ones, the so-called house slaves. You work in a villa. You dust statues. You fold togas. You scrub marble floors you'll never be allowed to sit on. And when the day ends, you return to your quarters, which is a fancy word for whatever space your body can fold into without dying. Sometimes it's a cramped back room, built into the side of the kitchen, filled with smoke and soot and the scent of 1,000 burned lentils. Sometimes it's a crawl space near the stables, where the smell of horses is stronger than your will to keep breathing. And sometimes, if your master is especially frugal, you share a corner of the atrium with the brooms, and every time someone walks past, they mistake you for furniture. Your sleeping space is usually shared for 5-10 others crammed together on the floor. If you're lucky, you get a woven mat. If you're not, it's bare stone. Either way, it's cold in the winter, hot in the summer, and lumpy all year round. There are no walls, no doors, no curtains, no do not disturb signs. Privacy, that's a citizen's luxury. You sleep in a space where someone's snoring in one ear, coughing in the other, and there's a decent chance a rat is nesting beneath your ribs for warmth. And then there are the farm slaves, the quarry slaves, the mine workers. No ceilings, no walls, just the open air and the hard-packed earth. If it rains, you get wet. If it freezes, you get frostbite. And if the wind picks up, your blanket, if you have one, flies away like a bird, trying to escape this entire arrangement. Your bed is a shallow hole in the ground, or a pile of straw, matted with sweat and insects and memories of better lives. The straw doesn't keep you warm. It just reminds you that you're not hay, you're lower than that. Because at least animals get stables. There's no light, no candle, no fire, unless you're important enough to stand near someone else's. You sleep in the dark, with bugs crawling across your legs, and the occasional spider deciding your face is prime real estate, and it doesn't really matter where you sleep, inside or out, because the result is always the same. You wake up sore, you wake up itchy, you wake up tired, and you do it all again. Even the so-called luxury slaves, the scribes, the tutors, the personal attendants who sleep indoors, they aren't exempt. Sure, they have a roof, but the room is still cramped, the air still stale, and the expectations even higher. You're not just working all day, you're performing, polishing silver with a smile, speaking Greek flawlessly, never sitting unless permitted, always listening, never resting. Even your dreams aren't yours anymore. So no, you don't return to a warm bed at night. You return to a reminder that in Rome, slaves don't have homes, just places to wait for morning. It's still dark, not quiet dark, not peaceful dark. This is the kind of dark where you can feel the cold on your teeth, the kind where the stars are just barely beginning to vanish, and you're already regretting being conscious. You didn't wake up. You were woken, probably by someone yelling, or kicking the door open, or grabbing your foot and shaking it like they're trying to pull your soul out through your ankle. If you're lucky, it's just a barked order. If not, it's a slap across the ear, one of those ringing, stingy ones that make the whole day echo in your skull. There's no blanket to clutch, no alarm clock to snooze, just cold stone beneath your back, and the stiff ache of a night spent twisted on whatever space your body could claim. Your shoulders are numb, your legs are cramping. You try to stretch, and immediately regret it when your spine sounds like someone stepping on dry twigs. You sit up slowly. The floor is still damp, not freshly damp, just always damp, the kind of moisture that lives in old walls and older straw. You breathe in deeply, and that's a mistake too. The smell of the Roman morning is a special kind of punishment. It's smoke from half-burned wood, stale sweat from 20 unwashed bodies, sour wine from your master's late-night indulgence, and something else, something earthy and rotten, like old cabbage that died in a corner weeks ago and no one thought to bury it. There's coughing. Nearby, someone wheezes, someone else groans. A mouse scurries overhead, knocking something off a shelf. It lands with a clink. No one moves. No one cares. This is how every day starts. No sunlight through curtains. No warm bathrobe. No fresh air. Just the quiet panic of knowing you're already late, and the dull burn of dread settling into your stomach before breakfast even exists. If you're indoors, you try not to bump the person next to you. Space is limited. Tempers are shorter. Everyone is tired. If you're outside, you're probably soaked in morning dew, your skin already stiff, your limbs already shivering. You stand slowly, joints crackling, like a half-broken statue learning to walk, you don't get a moment to gather your thoughts. They're shouting again, louder now. Someone spilled a bucket. Someone else is missing. You don't ask questions. You just move, because in the Roman world, the day doesn't begin when you're ready. It begins when someone tells you it does. And if you're slow, you'll feel it in your ribs, in your back, or on the soles of your feet after they make. You run laps barefoot around the courtyard for being lazy. You glance outside. The sky is starting to turn pale grey. The day hasn't even started, and you're already exhausted. And this, believe it or not, was considered a good morning. You're up, you're cold, you're tired. Which means, in the Roman Empire, you're right on schedule, because now, it's time to work. And when you're a slave, work isn't a job. It's not a duty. It's not even a punishment. It's your identity. You wake up a slave. You work as a slave. You go to sleep briefly and wake up again, still a slave. The cycle doesn't break. Because if it ever did, Rome might collapse. And Rome doesn't like collapsing. Not until the 5th century. Now, what kind of work you do depends on what kind of slave you are. Don't get excited. None of them are good. If you're a field slave, you're up before dawn, hoe in hand, mud already clinging to your ankles. You plant grain, you harvest olives, you carry water, you bend over, until your spine forgets how to stand straight. And you do it for hours, in the sun, in the rain, with no shoes and no lunch break. Your job is simple. Make the land richer while you grow thinner. Then there's construction, building Rome, brick by brick, stone by crushing stone, roads, walls, villas you'll never sleep in, baths you'll never sleep in, baths you'll never enter, temples you're not allowed to pray in. You lift things, you move things, you bleed. You're yelled at by foremen with sticks and tempers. And when you collapse from heat or exhaustion, they step over you. Sometimes they leave you there. Sometimes they drag you out of the way, so you don't block progress. Progress is important. You're not. And if you drew the worst lot of all, you're in the mines. There's no sky in the mines. No air that doesn't choke you. You dig, dig, dig in the dark, through rock and dust and despair. Some mines are so deep, the light never touches your skin again. People die down there, not dramatically, just quietly, like a candle going out in a wet cave. And yet, there are still worse. Jobs like the galleys, if you've ever dreamed of rowing a boat for days at a time, while chained to a bench with 70 other terrified men. Congrats, you're a galley. Slave, you row until your skin splits. You row until the sea spray feels like fire. You row until the man beside you dies, and is dragged off the bench like a sack of meat, and the ship doesn't stop because Rome has wars to win, grain to deliver, and your arms, they're not yours. They belong to the empire. Now you might think, well, what about the house slaves? That has to be better, right? Better, maybe, easier, not a chance. House slaves live under constant watch, cleaning, dressing, cooking, serving. You polish your master's silver while he berates you for smudging his ego. You prepare meals you can't taste. You bathe noble children while they kick you and scream about their sandals being too tight. You're a shadow in the villa, present, but not seen, heard, but not allowed to speak. You memorize your master's moods like scripture. One wrong word, and you're whipped. One spilled jug, and you're blamed for the rain. Even the elite slaves, the scribes, the tutors, The ones who read poetry and teach Latin to bored little emperors in training. Even they are just one bad day away from being reassigned to the fields, or worse, the mines. Knowledge doesn't protect you. Nothing does. Because no matter your role, your title, your skill set in Rome, if you're a slave, the work never ends, and neither does the misery. All right, you've worked yourself half to death before breakfast, and now it's time to talk about what you're wearing. Spoiler, not much in the Roman Empire. Slaves didn't get wardrobes. You weren't handed options. You didn't browse a market stall and say, "Ooh, I'll take the linen one in ash grey." No, you were handed a tunic, maybe. And that tunic, it's not new, it's not soft, it's not even yours. It's a rectangle, of course, itchy wool, stitched together by someone who definitely didn't care if your skin stayed intact. You don't wear it so much as endure it. The fabric feels like it was made by weaving together regret and sandpaper. It's heavy when it's wet, and it's always somehow a little damp, even when it hasn't rained in weeks. It clings in all the wrong places and sags in the others. One shoulder is always slipping off. One side is always shorter than the other. It was probably designed for someone else entirely, but no one bothered checking. And underwear. Don't make me laugh, slaves. Don't get underwear. You get a tunic and a prayer that it doesn't rip open in the middle of the villa while you're carrying your master's If you're unlucky, you might get a second tunic, but only when the first one has disintegrated into a threadbare whisper of its former self. Some slaves, especially those working in the fields or mines, don't even get that, just a ragged cloth tied around the waist, barely enough to cover anything and definitely not enough to preserve dignity. You don't have privacy, you don't have protection, and you definitely don't have modesty. As for shoes, forget it. Leather. Sandals. That's a luxury. Most slaves go barefoot, through mud, stones, animal droppings, broken pottery, and the occasional scorpion. Your feet are cracked, raw, and permanently calloused. They're not feet anymore. They're tools, like everything else about you. In winter, your tunic does nothing. No wool lining, no coat, no second layer. Just a wet breeze slicing through your ribs like a knife dipped in ice water. You huddle near the fire if you're indoors. If you're outdoors, you just shiver and try not to dye your fingers. Go numb, your ears burn red. Your breath fogs in front of you while your joints lock up like rusty hinges. There's no such thing as dressing for the weather when your entire wardrobe could fit inside a breadbasket, and in summer, that same tunic now becomes a personal sauna. The wool soaks up your sweat and holds it close, like a damp, clingy curse. It chafes, it scratches, it stinks, and it never, ever dries. You try to adjust it, but it just sticks. You move, and it rubs. You itch constantly. Your thighs, your back, your neck, and there's no ointment, no powder, no relief. Even at night, you don't take it off. It's your clothing, your blanket, your bedsheet. If it gets stolen, you're out of luck. And if it tears, too bad, you'll be patching it with scraps from someone else's torn tunic, probably while still wearing it. So yes, you're clothed, but only in the most technical sense, because in the Roman Empire, a slave's wardrobe isn't about comfort, style, or protection. It's about minimum coverage for maximum obedience, and even that feels like too much to ask. Your stomach's been growling for hours. It's not subtle. It roars like a caged animal and echoes through your hollow insides. But don't get excited. This isn't the part where you eat a hearty Roman breakfast and wipe your mouth with a clean cloth napkin. You're a slave. That means food is not a right. It's a maybe. Meals, if you get them, are short, silent, and designed to keep you just alive enough to keep working. Let's start with the menu. If you're lucky, and I mean stars aligned, God's smiling kind of lucky, you get a hunk of stale bread. It's dense, dry, hard enough to chip a tooth if you bite carelessly. And no, there's no butter, no oil, no dipping sauces imported from Carthage. Just bread, old bread. Bread that may or may not have seen mold last week. If you're less lucky, it's porridge. A watery, beige slop that tastes like sadness and gravel. It's made from millet or barley or whatever grain was cheapest this month. No spices, no sweetness, just hot mush, served in a chipped bowl, if you even get a bowl. Sometimes it's ladled into your hands, and you eat like a dog, crouched in the corner, licking porridge off your own fingers, still feeling hungry. Don't worry, there might be olive pits. Not olives, just the pits. You find them discarded in a pile, and if you're desperate, you suck them, pretending there's still flavor left in their hollow little souls. You tell yourself it helps. It doesn't. You're always the last to eat, if you get to eat at all. The masters eat first. Of course they do. Platters of roasted meats, baskets of warm bread, fruits, dates, cheeses. You serve their food. You carry it in, balancing silver trays you're not allowed to look at too long. You watch them chew slowly, sip wine casually, push aside perfectly. Good food, because it's too cold. And you stand there, stomach turning, sweat dripping down your back. Eyes fixed on the floor, because staring is disrespectful, even if you're starving. Sometimes they leave scraps. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes the dogs get it first. As for drinks, let's talk about that fantasy wine. Never yours. You pour it for your master. You sniff it accidentally. You wipe the cup clean, and if he spills a few drops, you might sneak a taste from the rim before washing it out. But if he catches you, you're whipped. Maybe. Worse, because wine is for Romans, and you're not Roman. You're furniture with lungs. Beer. That's a barbarian thing, not a Roman delicacy. Milk, save it for the goat. Water, sure, if it hasn't been used to wash someone's feet. You drink from whatever trough or clay jug is available, assuming no one else got there first. And if the well's dry, or the cistern's cracked, or someone else drank the last cup, well, you go without. Again, so you eat what's given. You don't complain, because in Rome, a hungry slave is an obedient one, and every mealtime you remember, you're not being nourished. You're just being maintained like a tool, like a beast, like a thing. So you spilled the wine, or you were too slow lighting the lamps, or maybe your master just woke up in a bad mood and decided your face was the reason. It doesn't matter, because you're going to be punished. There's no warning, no explanation. No one pulls you aside and talks about your performance. There's no gentle chat, no HR. There is only pain. Punishment in the Roman Empire isn't some last resort. It's not rare, it's the system. It's how they keep order. Because when you own people like furniture, you treat them like furniture. And when furniture creaks too loud, you hit it. The lash is the usual choice. A leather whip cracked across your back until the skin opens like paper left in the rain. Sometimes it's a rod. Sometimes it's a fist. Sometimes it's the back of a hand. Quick, sharp, humiliating, and it can happen anywhere, in the fields, in the kitchens, in the baths, at the market. Your master doesn't need a reason. He doesn't even need witnesses, because the law is on his side, and you, legally speaking, are just property that breathes. There is no trial, no hearing. No one asks you what happened. They just decide what you deserve, and if they think you've truly stepped out of line, that punishment goes beyond pain. It becomes a message. Some slaves are branded iron, heated in fire, pressed against the skin until it sizzles and scars. A mark, a warning, a forever burn that tells the world, this one is owned. Others are chained, ankle to ankle, wrist to wrist, neck to wall. You sleep in chains, eat in chains. Your skin develops bruises that never heal, just fade into new ones. If you're considered dangerous, or if your master enjoys the aesthetic, you might be fitted with a slave collar, a thick iron ring around your neck, sometimes with an inscription, I belong to Marcus. If found, return me, like a dog. Except dogs are sometimes fed better. But even that isn't the worst of it, because Rome, in all its glory and marble and philosophy, is still Rome, and that means death is always on the menu. Some slaves are worked to death. No breaks, no care, no concern. You collapse in the mines, and they don't even drag your body out. They just hand your shovel to the next man. Your grave is the dust you died in. Others are tortured, slowly, deliberately, publicly, whipped until bones show, starved in front of feasts, locked in dark holes for days without water, just to make a point, just to remind the others. And if you're truly unlucky, you're crucified. Yes, that crucifixion, hung on a wooden post, arms stretched, legs bent, left to die slowly over hours, sometimes days. Not for murder, not for rebellion, maybe just for running away, or answering back. There is no scale of justice. There is no appeal. There is only the brutal fact of being a slave in Rome. You are always one mistake away from misery, and one master's whim away from death. Hope is expensive, and in Rome you can't afford it. You're awake, you're working, you're surviving. But your mind, that's the part they never talk about, because when you're a slave, it's not just your back that breaks. It's your sense of self, quietly, slowly, one day at a time. You don't really remember your real name anymore. The one your mother whispered when she held you. That was years ago, before they took you, before they sold you. Now you're boy or girl, or that one. Sometimes you're given a name by your master, a Roman one, something easier to bark across a room, but it's not yours. Nothing is. Most slaves weren't born here. You were taken from Gaul or Africa or Thrace. Maybe you were just a child when the soldiers came. Maybe you watched your village burn. Maybe you were old enough to understand what it meant when they separated you from your family, and young enough to believe you'd find them again. You won't, and as the years pass, even the memories fade. Faces blur, voices vanish. You forget the sound of your brother's laugh. You forget your mother's cooking. What you remember instead is shouting, orders, the sharp sting of a whip, the smell of Roman sweat and dust and blood, the sound of chains dragging behind someone who doesn't even cry anymore. Loneliness becomes a constant. Even when you're surrounded by other slaves, you don't talk much. You don't make friends, because friends disappear. Friends get sold. And the more you care, the more it hurts when they vanish. One day just gone. So you build walls in your mind and live behind them. You learn to smile when they're looking, to nod, to bow, to say yes, master, even when your soul wants to scream. Because that smile, fake, tight, exhausted, might keep you from getting hit. It might let you eat that night. It might keep you alive another day. But it comes at a cost. You wake up tired, not just in your body, in your bones, in your heart, like every day is a repeat of the one before. Like there's no end to this, because there isn't, unless you count death. You stop dreaming after a while. Hope becomes something dangerous, something heavy, something that hurts more than it helps. You used to imagine freedom. Now you imagine silence, rest, an hour without orders, a meal you don't have to earn. You stop thinking about someday, because someday doesn't exist here. Here, there's only today, and today is survival. That's the cruelest part of slavery in Rome. Not the chains, not the whips, not the aching, freezing, barefoot labor. It's the slow erosion of everything inside you that once felt human. Until you don't feel much at all you've thought about it. Admit it, in the dead of night, staring at the cracked wall, lying on your sack of straw. You've imagined it, running, fighting, escaping. But here's the thing. So has every other slave, and almost none of them make it, because rebellion in Rome, it's not a storybook, it's not glory, it's a death sentence dressed up as a daydream. Sure, there were uprisings. Rome doesn't like to talk about them, but they happened. The most famous, Spartacus, a gladiator, a man who had the nerve, the audacity to say no more. He led tens of thousands of slaves into revolt. They fought, they ran, they won battles. For a while, until Rome crushed them with legions. Spartacus died, his army was slaughtered, and 6,000 survivors were crucified, one by one, along the Appian Way. A slow, agonizing message nailed into wood. A message that said, don't even think about it. And most don't, because escaping in the Roman Empire is like trying to hide in a world with no shadows. There are no forests deep enough, no cities anonymous enough. Your accent gives you away. Your clothes, if you even have any, scream. Slave. Your skin might still show the brand your master burned into it. And worst of all, someone is always watching. Rome runs on fear, and it pays in whispers. There are spies everywhere. Other slaves, desperate for favor, willing to trade your secret for one less beating. Neighbors, merchants, even children, they'll all report you. Because helping a runaway slave, that's a crime. A serious one. So even if you get out, where do you go? You have no money, no friends outside the estate. You can't read the maps you never learned to draw. And food, forget it. You're starving by day 2, thirsty by day 1. And by nightfall, you're not dreaming of freedom. You're just dreaming of not dying alone in a ditch. And if they catch you, they don't just punish you. They make a spectacle of it. Runaways are beaten, stripped, branded again. Some have iron collars locked around their necks with inscriptions that say, I ran, I was caught, don't trust me. Others are hobbled, their feet mutilated to prevent future escapes. Some are blinded, some are simply killed, slowly in public, because Rome doesn't just crush rebellion, it parades the corpse. And yet, you still think about it. Not because you're brave, not because you believe you'll succeed, but because even the illusion of escape is sweeter than reality. You rehearse it in your head. One day, one night, one moment where you slip through the gates while no one's looking. But someone's always looking, so you stay, and you obey. And you tell yourself that rebellion is foolish, impossible, a myth for poets and ghosts. Because in Rome, freedom isn't a plan, it's a rumor, and rebellion, it's just another word for suicide. Welcome to Rome. It's loud, crowded, and still terrible. You didn't end up in the fields, not the mines, not the galleys. No, you've been assigned to the city, Rome itself, a place of marble columns, overflowing fountains, and endless chaos. You might think this is an upgrade, and technically it is. You're not being whipped in a vineyard or digging until you collapse in a quarry. Instead, you wake up every day in a villa, not a mud hut. You sleep indoors, though still on the floor, and your feet might actually touch tiles instead of dirt. But don't be fooled. City life doesn't mean freedom. It just means your chains are hidden beneath cleaner clothes. If you're an urban slave, your job depends on the house you serve. Maybe you're a cook, sweating over a brick oven from dawn till dusk, preparing meals you'll never taste. Or you're a tutor, forced to teach a spoiled Roman child how to read Cicero while he throws ink at your face. You might be a doorman, a scribe, a messenger, or an accountant, keeping perfect records of your master's money while never owning a single coin yourself. Some of the most trusted slaves serve as personal attendants. You wash your master's body, dress him, hold his cloak when he walks, brush his hair, and if he snaps his fingers, you kneel always. Because in the city, you don't just serve, you perform. You are expected to be quiet, polite, polished, grateful. You must be invisible, but always present, fast, but never clumsy, obedient, but not robotic, helpful, but never in the way. It's a constant balance, and the price of tipping too far in any direction, punishment. Drop a dish, slap, mispronounce a name, whip, speak without permission. Beatings, speak with permission, but say the wrong thing, beatings again, because the city has rules, spoken and unspoken, and if you're a slave, you're expected to know all of them. Forget one, and you're reminded, violently, and then there's the pressure of being surrounded by free people, merchants, senators, citizens. You see them every day, strolling past you in fine togas, laughing, shopping, living. They don't acknowledge you. Sometimes they step around you. Sometimes they step on you. But you see them, and every time you do, you remember. They get to go home. You don't. Even within the household, you're at the bottom of a very strict ladder. If there's a hierarchy of slaves, and there always is, you're constantly fighting for a little safety, a little favor, a little less pain. Not for freedom, just for less suffering. You might hear whispers of slaves who were freed after years of loyal service, given a modest life, a tiny house, a name, and yes, that happens, but rarely. It's the exception, not the rule. And most of those freed still serve their former masters, now just with a different title. So yes, you serve in the city. Your hands are clean, your tunic's intact, but you're still not free. You live in a marble cage, and if you dare forget that, the cage reminds you. Your body hurts in ways you stopped describing a long time ago. Your hands cracked, your back bent, your breath shorter by the day. But you keep moving, because stopping is worse, until one day you can't move anymore. And that, finally, is when Rome lets you go. Death, the only true manumission for most slaves. The average life expectancy. Don't even think about getting old. If you were born a slave, making it past your 30s is a miracle. And if you were captured in your teens, sold after a war, or stolen in a raid, you're already running out of time. You don't die in a bed, wrapped in soft linen, surrounded by loved ones. You die on your feet, in a field, in a kitchen, in a galley. You collapse mid-step, mid-task, mid-prayer, and that's it. There's no funeral, no final words, just silence. And maybe a foot nudging your body to the side so work can keep going. You die from infection, from malnutrition, from exhaustion, like a candle that simply burns out. Sometimes it's exposure to cold in winter, to hot in summer. Sometimes it's punishment. Sometimes it's just time. And what happens next? If you're lucky, they bury you in a mass grave. No headstone, no name, just a shallow pit alongside dozens of others, bones tangled together like firewood. No one weeps, no one remembers. You were property, you broke, you were discarded. If they're in a hurry or just don't care, you're tossed into the trash heap outside the city walls. Fed to dogs, burned, forgotten. In rare cases, rare enough to feel like myths, a kind master frees a slave in their will. A gift, a token, a reward for loyal service. They call it manumission, the release from bondage. But don't count on it. It's not out of kindness, it's often politics. A gesture, something they do to feel righteous in their final breath. And even then, it's not a golden ticket. A freed slave is called a libertus. You get a name, yes. You might even own a shop, earn a wage, buy a home. But freedom is limited. You still owe loyalty to your former master's family. You still carry the stain of slavery in your reputation. And most never make it that far. You know this. Everyone does. So you stop dreaming of manumission. You stop watching your master's moods for signs of mercy. You stop imagining a letter with your name on it, handed down by a lawyer in a quiet room. Instead, you start to see death for what it really is. Not the end, just the exit. Because in Rome, death is the first time you stop answering to someone else. No whips, no shouting, no tasks. Just silence. You don't fear it. You don't welcome it either. You just understand it. When it comes, it comes. And when it does, for the first time in your life you are no longer owned. You thought slavery was brutal before. Now the crowd gets to watch you die. Not every slave is sent to the arena. But if you're strong, unlucky, and shaped like a walking weapon, congratulations. You're going to be a gladiator. Sounds glorious, right? Gold, cheers, fame. That's what the poets say. But here's what they leave out. It starts with chains. You're stripped, inspected, catalogued like cattle, then dragged to a ludas, a gladiator training school, though school is generous. It's more like a prison with gym equipment and fewer exits. They give you a new name, something Roman, marketable. You're no longer Gaius or Dren or whatever name your mother whispered to you. You're now Barbarus or Ferox or the Thracian, because now you're a product. You're trained to kill, not cleanly, not efficiently, but spectacularly. Your instructors are ex-gladiators or soldiers, men with dead eyes and no patience. They teach you how to swing a sword so the blood sprays high, how to fall dramatically, how to roar at the crowd like you enjoy it. And if you don't learn fast, they beat it into you. Training is relentless. Day and night. Wooden swords, then iron ones. Sprints, drills, drills. Your body screams. Your blisters burst. Your muscles burn until they stop feeling like yours. Asterisk food. Slightly better, because you're an investment now. But you're not eating feasts. Just enough to keep you breathing and bleeding. Eventually, they take you to the arena. The Colosseum, if you're lucky. Other times, smaller cities. Dusty fields. Makeshift pits. The crowd roars. They don't see a slave. They see a show. You're thrown into the sand with another man, another weapon, and one expectation: die well. Sometimes it's not even a fair fight. Maybe he's got a trident, and you've got a net with holes in it. Maybe it's 3 against 1. Maybe there are animals, starved lions, angry bulls. Sometimes there's fire, and the audience, they love it. They drink, they cheer, they bet on who dies first. You're not a person to them. You're tonight's entertainment. If you win, you live. Until the next match. Some gladiators do survive. A few even become celebrities. Their names carved on walls. Their faces painted on pottery. They're given women, wine, sometimes even gold. But that fame comes with strings, because no matter how popular you are, you're still a slave, still disposable. If you get injured, they patch you up. If you get too old, they retire you or feed you to something bigger. And if you ask for freedom, they laugh, or worse, they promise it and never deliver. Because in Rome, pain is currency, and yours is profitable. So you fight, you bleed, you entertain, and when the crowd chants your name, you don't smile. You clench your jaw and raise your sword, because you know something they don't. They'll go home tonight. You might not. Freedom isn't what you think it is. Especially in Rome, it finally happens. One morning, your master sends for you. There's no whip, no order, no insult waiting. Just a scroll, a quiet nod, and a word you've only whispered to yourself when no one could hear. Manumission, you're free, or so they say. You're now a libertus, a freedman. No more being bought or sold. No more chains. You get a name now. 3 of them, actually Roman style. Usually some version of your former master's, to remind everyone where you came from. You might even receive a little land, a job, a room, of your own, and people will smile and say, you made it. But you'll know the truth. You're still owned, just in a different way. Because being freed in Rome doesn't mean you're equal. It just means your collar is invisible now. The law says you're no longer a slave, but the expectations, they never left. You still owe loyalty to your former master. Legally, socially, quietly, you're expected to visit, work for him if asked, praise him in public. He is now your patron, and you, his client. A different word for a similar chain. You can't hold high office. You can't vote in most elections. Your children might rise, but you'll always be a man who used to belong to someone else. People look at you differently, even other freedmen, even slaves. To the freeborn, you're always a step below. To the enslaved, you're a reminder of a freedom they'll never taste. And, maybe worst of all, you're haunted by something that didn't exist when you were enslaved, regret, because now you know what life could be. You walk the streets on your own 2 feet. You sleep without someone barking your name. You eat food that isn't scraps, maybe even hot bread, meat. A sip of wine, but the memories, they don't go away. The years in chains, the lashes, the names they called you, the things they made you do, the loved ones you lost. You carry it. All freedom gives you space to think. And thinking is a dangerous luxury when your past is full of pain. You smile more now because people expect it. You wear better clothes, though your skin still remembers the itch of rags. You speak when spoken to, clearly, calmly, politely. But in the quiet moments, you ask yourself, is this what freedom feels like? Because it doesn't feel light. It doesn't feel clean. It feels heavy. Like you're wearing a ghost version of your old chains. Better than slavery. Of course, but is it freedom? Not quite. You're not being beaten. But you're not whole, not really. And when people pass you in the market and say, "Ah, he used to be a slave, but he made something of himself," you smile, you nod. But inside, you know the truth. You didn't make something of yourself. Rome made you, and Rome never really lets you go. The fire has burned low. The voices have quieted. But the story still lingers. You've made it. One full day in ancient Rome as a slave. You woke up on cold stone. You ate stale crumbs. You worked. You bled. You obeyed. You saw the city's grandeur from the shadows, and the empire's pride from beneath its heel. You've seen the worst of it. And the worst of it is how normal it was. Slavery wasn't the exception. It was the engine. The silent machinery behind every feast, every bathhouse, every marble column gleaming in the sun. And people like you, people owned, kept it running. You weren't just mistreated. You were erased. No one asked how you felt. No one listened when you cried. And no one remembered your name once you were gone. You've survived beatings, starvation, and the sting of iron against skin. You've worked fields until your hands bled. You've poured wine you'll never taste. You've learned silence, obedience, fear. And now it's night again. You lie on the same cold floor. Your tunic still itches. Your bones still ache. But the shouting has stopped. The doors have closed. The sky has turned a darker shade of black. The only sound is your breath. Shallow, quiet. Still here, you've survived one day in ancient Rome. Barely, and tomorrow it starts again. The sun will rise. The orders will return. The sandals will stomp. The lash will crack. And once again, you'll remember your place at the very bottom. But not now. Now, it's still. Now, you rest. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking through this day with me. It wasn't easy. It wasn't pleasant. But sometimes, remembering the past, even the awful parts, helps us understand how far we've come. If you found this story interesting, dark, or just oddly comforting in its honesty, feel free to like the video or subscribe, only if you want more strange, quiet nights like this. And maybe let me know in the comments where you're listening from, what time it is, what the stars look like where you are, because tonight we traveled far, and you're still here. So now, take one last deep breath. Let it go and close your eyes. Be grateful for warm beds, for toothbrushes, for socks, for silence. Be grateful that when you wake up tomorrow, it won't be in a Roman slave hut. Now, close your eyes and be glad you're not waking up in ancient Rome.